Hey, everybody, latest edition, Kolpack and Izzo Podcast. Back here, middle of September. Should be getting ready for college football. We are in a different kind of way, but we're also grieving today as we tape this episode. Former Bison basketball player, Ross A standout, Jordan Aaberg passed away unexpectedly Tuesday night at the age of 29. His former coach, Saul Phillips, is going to join us later in our show. I wrote last night, I know you did as well, Jeffrey, in the paper. To me, this one was like a punch in the gut. I remember covering Jordan in high school. That was like one of my first major assignments for WDAY, was covering this unheralded prospect out of tiny Ross A. And I remember following him on the high school circuit where it was like a traveling road show. Wherever Ross A went, there were people coming out of the woodwork to see this kid. And then to see him go on and play at NDSU, play as a true freshman at NDSU, and have the kind of career arc that he did, including having such an impact on that team that went to the tournament and beat Oklahoma. It was a punch in the gut yesterday.
I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, 29 years old. It's just words can't describe it. What I remember most is not so much on the court. I really don't recall a whole lot of plays on the court, simply because he had such health issues.
He did.
He was battling. It was inconsistent.
A couple of concussions he had, too.
Right. But I remember, and Dexter Warner took the words right out of my mouth when I was talking to him yesterday about Jordan, that he had this sheepish grin. He always had that little grin. Yep. You know, it was always a persona. His body language was always of, what a nice guy. You know, what a nice man.
There was not a piece of video I was looking through, whether it was shoot around or practice, that he wasn't smiling. Even when Jason Kemp was putting him through the grinder, he still had that kind of grin that was working on him. And it's funny, Nate Zastro, former Bison guard, told me this yesterday, that, you know, that Saul and Dave Richmond were both trying to get this nasty streak out of him, to get him kind of pissed off, and Gordon and Nate's words, and it didn't work. It didn't take. I mean, he would get a little agitated, but that was just not his nature, not at all.
You know, and part of I think a movement or a theme of Division I basketball. When the move was made, you thought there's no way anybody from around here is going to become a Division I basketball player. Same with football.
I was going to say football certainly, I know, is the talk.
Football, but really to find a player, and keep in mind back in 04, 05 and when all the transition was going on, that when Tim Miles started recruiting these guys, Ben Woodside was from southeastern Minnesota. But then you had Luke Mormon. Will he make it?
Dickinson, North Dakota.
You know, and so they recruited these guys, and you wondered if they would make an impact at the Division I level. Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah. I mean, they did to the tune of, 3 NCAA tournament appearances now.
Yeah, the interesting thing to that, and I can remember even chatting with you in those days when Aaberg committed and early on playing, I think the football theory was put to bed by then. That you saw Kyle Steffes, yep. You saw Tyler Roll, you saw those guys playing. Basketball, it hadn't happened yet. You mentioned those guys, but they weren't. Mormon was it, and Mormon was not necessarily the most talented guy among those 4. So when Aaberg,
Winkleman from Morris,
right,
not
from
that
Morris,
far,
correct.
But he was an incredible athlete.
He was. So when Aaberg, when they offered him, I think there's a lot like, wait a minute, what? Ross A, Minnesota? And like, I'm not sitting here trying to make him more than he was.
Yes, project.
Absolutely. But he turned into a viable bench player for them who played major minutes. You wrote about it yesterday, how big he was in the Summit League championship game, a game they were heavily favored in Sioux Falls against Fort Wayne, that they were trailing by 12, if I remember right, in the second half, and he had a major part in that.
What do role players do? Role players set a screen to make the hero of the guy who hit the winning shot.
Which was Taylor Braun.
Role players come off the bench when they're called upon. Not when they want to, but when they're saying, okay, you. And then role players produce when they get out. And role players do the job when they're hurt. They do the job if they don't play, and then they have to play the next game. If they don't play, they don't sulk.
Right.
You become a good teammate.
And he missed a whole year with concussion. He easily could have given up the game as well, Kolpack, after that sophomore year. After playing as a true freshman, he could have just packed it up. And he dealt with a lot of injuries.
Have you ever had a bad back? Truly, have you ever had a bad back?
No, not a consistent, no. Nope.
I've had it from time to time, and thankfully, knock on wood, not so much lately in later years here, but it hurts. Dom, it hurts
every day. Yeah,
it's a stinging pain at times, and back injuries are different. I'm not sure exactly what entailed. Is he never let on with it?
Right.
Playing through pain, you can say what you want to. You can say it, but can you do it?
It's another thing to do it. That block he had, I dug it up against Oklahoma, was early in that game, but it also sent kind of a message, Kolpack, that these boys from the Summit League are going to play. They had the vaunted 12 seed, remember, going into that. Everybody picks the 12 against the 5. But there was another thing when they actually went out and did it.
Did you see the reaction of his teammates right after that?
Yeah.
It really jacks you up.
It did.
If you're a guy on the floor, if you're a guy on the bench, if you're Saul, coaching, when Jordan Aaberg comes and Patrick Ewing's a shot into the third row against Oklahoma in the NCAA tournament, it's got to do something for you.
It was pretty good stuff. So with that, we had a chance to visit with Saul Phillips, former Bison head coach, one of the men who recruited Jordan Aaberg to come to Fargo. And here's our interview with Saul. Kolpack, I found this clip yesterday when I was looking through some old video. And Saul, I found the interview you gave us on signing day in 2008 about how Jordan was kind of this hidden gem, but he was like this story that everyone was talking about on the AAU circuit. I remember that was the first time I saw him was in the summer, I think, of 2007, and what kind of freak he was from tiny Rossay, Minnesota. Can you go back, recollect as best you can about the first instance or time you heard about him?
Well, we were constantly scouring Rossay for prospects. We spent days upon. No, I saw him play first on the summer circuit, and he looked a little bit like a deer on ice. Like he really long legs, a little bit awkward sometimes, but boy, every once in a while he'd do something so fluid, and he was affecting every shot. And again, I'm thinking this kid's 45 minutes down the road, and he's doing it to some people that are rated a lot higher than him. It didn't take me very long to decide to go on him. I remember people going, well, we're not going to win with a kid from Rossay. I remember hearing that. We got to think bigger than that. We're Division I. Well, yeah, but Division I comes from all kinds of different places and areas. And I even think there was a little bit of, from his camp, from his family, they were certainly delighted he was going to be close enough. But I think there was some, am I ready for this? At the very beginning, I remember having to talk to his mom and Jordan himself and said, "Listen, you're good enough to do this. You just need to be here and trust in us a little bit." And sure enough, he was good as a freshman.
Oh, I remember when he verbaled. I think he verbaled a little early.
Yeah. And
the thought then, Saul, was, well, he's not going to play for another 2 years. There's 2 years to develop, this guy, this 6'9" frame. And lo and behold, he plays as a true freshman.
Yeah, and it's funny because he had a game against UW Green Bay that he kind of broke out. And I remember feeling, it's horrible, but it's a true statement. I felt validated, like, see, I was right on this guy. It's funny because you're as a coach, in essence, you're placing bets on these kids. I think he's good enough. I think he's, and when you see it come to fruition, there's a tremendous amount of pride that comes with that. And then to see him start to believe, I think we'll get to this, I'm sure, but his career could have looked a lot different. He wouldn't have had a back that was like an accordion, basically. He was always in the training room, and he fought through a lot of injuries.
Nate Zastro told me yesterday that you and Dave constantly tried to get Jordan angry, that was something just to bring out a different side of him to maybe play, I don't know, more aggressive. Can you go into that a little bit about, because I always saw the kid smiling. Even on the basketball court, I saw him smiling.
You literally, you look at any picture that's taken of him, and there's always a little bit of a smirk on his face. And, it's funny because he's a small-town kid. He was an aw-shucks kind of kid. But he was also brilliant. Like, he was a very, very smart human being. He was a 4.0 student. He was he kind of played to that. And we tried to take him out of that, but we never saw an angry Jordan. We just didn't. And sometimes you want to see just a little bit of an edge out of somebody. But boy, after a while, we just came to terms with that's not his nature, and that's not the worst quality to have as a human being. So we'll take the pretty effective, happy Jordan that we have, and go on from there. But yeah, I mean, I remember basically talking down the prairie chicken outside of Rosse. I got that personal with him. So we were all over him for a little while, but he was a hard guy to actually be mad at. So I think that didn't help us either. I think he always kind of knew that these guys really like me. It's okay.
And Dave brought up he was on the floor in one of the biggest shots in history when Braun hit the game winner. Eventual game winner gets Fort Wayne.
Yeah, Marsh couldn't keep his big butt out of foul trouble, and it's so funny because the role that he was physically able to play his senior year was exactly what we needed. Marshall was going to be on the court for as long as he could stay out of foul trouble, but every once in a while it would rear itself, and we needed somebody to step into his spot and be able to handle a big moment. The shot that Taylor Braun hit, that he got made the bucket against IPFW to send it. Jordan set the screen, and the reason the screen works is because Jordan was a viable scorer and a viable shooter, and you couldn't just leave him. So, yeah, Taylor scores, and he kind of played the Luke Mormon to Ben Woodside.
Right.
In that,
I was going to bring that up. Yep.
It's eerily similar, the situation. I really truthfully believe that if you go back, you could maybe make an argument that the kid from IPFW was maybe a slightly better center, and then the only better center in the league was Marshall. Like that was it. And Marshall only led the nation in field goal percentage.
Yeah.
If it would have been really fun with a healthy Jordan to be able to go Twin Towers at times, but his back just wouldn't let him do it at that point.
The other play, that one, Jeff, came up to me. The other one, Saul, was early in the Oklahoma game. He had a monster block that sent it, 2 rows into the stands in the game against Oklahoma. That one came right to mind. I dug that up and looked at that there he looked healthy, and it ended up being obviously the biggest game of that class's career with that win over Oklahoma.
Well, that's Ross's swagger right there. No, he had a dunk his sophomore year at Wichita State. That it was a tip slam, and I can't find the footage of it. I don't. Most of our games are logged on a program called Synergy, and I can go back and look. For some reason, that game did not get logged, and it was. I believe it was Austin took a jump shot. Pennick took a jump shot, and it was almost a Trayvon where his whole elbow was above the rim, and he brought it back down. And I remember it really vividly because that was the loudest building we ever played in, period, when I was at North Dakota State. And for that second, the whole crowd just went, ooh. He brought the whole crowd to a silence and then ran back down and did exactly what he was supposed to do with no fanfare at all. So he was a joy to be around. I touched upon the back stuff. He goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him, well, the reason you have a bad back is because you've got bad posture. Well, he's 6'11", and he's driving around this little compact car. He goes, no crap, Doc. Have you ever seen me get into a car?
What do you think the impact he had, and now that it's a few years beyond that, especially on small-town Minnesota guys going to play Division I basketball?
Well, I think it took a lot of, the fan base. Just talk about our fan base. And their thought was, we're going to Division I, we can't take local kids anymore. And not only did we take a local kid, we took one from the smallest school in Minnesota, 45 minutes away, and he plugged in just fine. I hope that he inspired some more to come. There's certainly been plenty more after that that have come through the Summit League and have contributed. And, a whole lot of players that maybe didn't make the Division I level, but the dream of chasing that maybe got them to a good Division II. Or if you were around Jordan, he was going to inspire you. And with nothing flashy, but just with his attitude, his demeanor, he was a uniter. And I think it's really ironic that in his passing, the last gift he gave us is that we've had a lot of conversations with team members and people. And it's going to be a whole herd of bison descending on Fargo for the arrangements. There's no question about that.
So help me understand this. You go through all that with these Bison players. You move on to Ohio, and a whole lot goes on there. You go through a coaching change, a life change. Your wife goes through some health issues, and comes back. You go to Aberdeen. Yet you remember, Saul, these little minute details of a backup forward from Rosse.
Well, Jordan was special. I mean, that's all there is to it. And the bottom line is, in talking to our guys last night, bringing up little stories about Jordan, about other things, about everything. The joy of coaching is the relationships that you build and the amount of time that you spend together. You want to bond with a group, spend 3 days in Macomb, Illinois with them. That'll do it for you. All the very average buffets we ate at, all the little conversations we had. At the end of the day, it's easy to remember the Oklahoma game. It's easy to remember, but the journey was every bit as fun, and there's no doubt about that. We're all a family some way or another. The forum ran a picture of Jordan sitting there talking with Corey Brown in L.A. yesterday during a selection show, and I'm sitting there going, "There's Rosse, Peoria, Illinois, and Elgin, Illinois." And they look like brothers in that picture. And that's just about as cool of a thing as you can ever have go through your mind. It's beautiful. And that three people that literally have had polar opposite background experiences and would do anything for each other. And how about this? I know for a fact that at least three of the pallbearers are going to be Jordan's teammates. That's the impact he had on the team and the bond that we formed.
Thanks so much for doing this, Saul. I know it had to be tough. We appreciate you coming on and reminiscing about Jordan today.
Well, what I really want to get across is there's going to be a lot of grief and a lot of pain, but there's a lot to celebrate with Jordan. And the sting will go away. We'll always miss him, but the sting will go away, and we'll be left with all the wonderful things that he did for all of us.
We thank Saul for coming on. Jordan is remembered by his wife and 1-year-old daughter. There's a GoFundMe account set up for them for any expenses. Ironically, Kolpack, the Bison basketball alumni, are actually in town this weekend for a golf event, and Aaberg was going to play in that event this weekend. It's just too much to process right now. In a year where we've had so much difficulty, heartache, struggle, it's just another one for us to deal with right now, and it's tough. It really is.
Yeah, and when you talk about a team and the brotherhood that these guys obviously were, you can't win being divisive. You just can't.
No,
not many teams can do it. If they have, who knows? I don't know of them.
It's not a long list.
It's not a long list. But you need rosters, 1 through 12 to buy into this thing, and you don't go to the NCAA tournament without a Jordan Aaberg. You don't. And
I think of that class, Kolpack, because early on, after the 2009 team, Saul had a couple lean years. 2010, 2011, they were not good. And that was when Aaberg was playing, Nate Zastrow was playing, early years of Taylor Braun and Marshall Bjorklund and Trayvon Wright, where they went through the ringer, where Oral Roberts and IUPUI had their way with them. And it wasn't until it would be his redshirt sophomore year, 2012, where I think they won 20 games or something that year. That was the first year they went to the CBI, I think it was, when things started to turn. But there were some lean years there as well for Bison basketball.
But typical of mid-major programs in that you build to a certain year. You recruit some freshmen, 5, 6 guys. You develop, hope they develop, and they do, and you make the tournament, and then you start over.
Right.
NDSU has avoided that for after Saul. I mean, Dave's been pretty consistent.
One lean year, I think 17 was it. But after that, you're exactly right. You're exactly right on that. Here's a cheap segue, though. So did you see what was proposed by the ACC coaches yesterday of a 356 Division I basketball tournament?
I'm so against that, I can't even tell you how much.
Go for it, because it looks like the NCAA is not for it either, by the way.
Come on. It goes back to let's give everybody a trophy, and if you don't feel like you've earned it, give it back at the end of the year.
Well, I understand.
It cheapens it.
No, it does.
I mean, it hugely cheapens it. And what is the underlying reason?
Money, because they lost out on last year's, right? So now I think one way to get it back, let's have everybody be in it because CBS, TNT, whoever would pony up, well, it's an NCAA tournament game. Now, the ACC coaches are putting out also under the premise of they don't want to play any non-conference games with the coronavirus out there, which, who knows, Kolpack, there may not be any non-conference games anyway, but that seemed a bit absurd, I think, to me. There has been talk for the last few years of doubling the field, of going from 64 to 128, which I think is still probably too many. I think there's probably a happy medium, but right now I think 68's a good number. The Summit League tournament is so what we saw this past March where UND made a run to the championship game. That's why it's cool because they wouldn't have gotten into the NCAA tournament had they just went there and lost their first game. They had a chance to go.
Do we see a 1 seed playing number 356?
You could do bracketology for that, by the way. I'm washing my hands of that. There's no, I mean, yeah. Is somebody going to be upset with the 223rd seed? You know, they didn't look at their resume too well. I mean, give me a break. Every idea is being thrown at the wall right now by the NCAA.
That one's not going to stick.
So we have our first weekend of Power 5 football. Before we talk about that, I know you were busy the last couple weekends. Did you have a chance to watch any college football last weekend of the
bits
6 or
and
7
pieces,
games?
Bits and pieces.
What did you think?
I saw Central Arkansas a little bit.
They got tired out from their 2 games in 5 days deal.
But they made it through.
They did.
That's a big thing I was looking for. They made it through and are still on par or on pace to come here on October 3rd to face NDSU. But it's not the same. The crowds are noticeable. The lack of crowds are noticeable, I think, in watching a game. And I will never take it for granted anymore of watching college football or when we watch NFL football, in some instances without a crowd.
Yep.
Although the Chiefs are having some people.
They will tonight. Yep.
That I'm never going to take it for granted. The atmosphere.
BYU Navy was prime example of that. The Naval Academy at Annapolis, they have a great atmosphere there. I've seen a couple just on TV.
I watched some of that.
And Navy's coach said it pregame. They had not been face-to-face at all. There had not been any tackling. They've been doing like dummies or any, and it showed. And they can't be alone, though, Kolpack, where you're going to probably see it now more this weekend when we have more of the Power 5 playing. The ACC and the Big 12 schools are playing this weekend, where you're going to have sloppy football and maybe a lot of one-sided games. That was, to me, was the story of the first week.
Kansas State has several guys out.
They do.
Up to, 12, 15?
At least 12 from what I heard, yeah.
Something like that. Starters, we're not sure, do we? I haven't paid that close attention to
I'm not sure on that.
K-State, but enough guys. They still should get by Arkansas State. But just curious to see how a Chris Kleiman coach team, which is the West Coast offense, is so predicated on timing and so predicated on physicality, that will it look the same?
It's good without any spring ball, with a fall camp that's been disrupted and stopped. They had to shut down in Manhattan. That's the question. I'm really curious. It's going to be ugly. I really think it will be for everybody. I don't think I'm just talking K-State. I think it's going to be everybody. It's not going to look pretty this weekend for teams out there.
I saw a lot of freshmen and sophomores on the offensive line two deep chart for K-State, so I got to wonder about Connor Riley. Okay, this isn't Dylan Radence. This isn't Joe Haig you're mentoring here.
Cordell Volson kind of deal. Yeah. You're not dealing
Tanner
with
Volson.
That. Right. I look at some of the other games, like Duke is going to play Notre Dame, Kolpack. It took a pandemic for Notre Dame to be in a football conference, and it happens now as they are an ACC school for this year only and playing Duke, and nobody will be there in South Bend for that. That's going to be odd to see on Saturday.
Well, there will be somebody there. There will be the glasses of the field designer, his father. Well, that's another story. But I might as well tell it.
Go for it.
Yeah, the one of the designers of the field, who shall rename nameless, when they were doing the underlying surface, his father had just passed away like a week or two earlier, and his father always wore these thick black glasses, and big Notre Dame fan. So during the process, in a corner right outside the end zone while they were laying the concrete, he took his father's glasses and put them inside the concrete, the substance. So his dad will always be able to watch a Notre Dame football game.
That's awesome. That's pretty
his glasses.
Cool. Yeah.
It's like his glasses are there.
That's fantastic. So
they have one fan.
They got one fan at least that's going to be there on Saturday. There is one Missouri Valley team playing on Saturday. Mo State, Bobby Petrino's debut going to Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley's already playing games with us, not going to reveal the starting quarterback, which is odd. Oklahoma's a 40-point favorite, folks, in this game. It's a pay-per-view only. I'm not shelling out $50. I don't know if you are.
That's amazing to me. That's just amazing.
Oklahoma's that hard up, I guess, for cash. But it didn't get selected for one of the Big 12 games.
I wonder how many people in Springfield, Missouri are going to pay $50.
How many in Norman, Oklahoma are? There's probably a ton, don't you think?
Probably.
It's Oklahoma football. I would watch the game if I could. I'm not spending $50 on it because I'd like to see what Mo State's going to look like with Bobby Petrino as head coach now. They went with a talented transfer at quarterback.
I think Bobby Petrino, what he wants to get out of this season, I think he's getting it out of this season, is he needed every rep and every game possible to try to get ahead of the other Valley schools, to try to get his program off to the way it should be. And for him, if he had to sit out all fall, like a lot of these Valley teams, I think he felt like he's behind the process in rebuilding this program. He's getting a head start. He's getting a head start on rebuilding that program. He'll find out if his transfer quarterback is good enough. He'll find out if a lot of these guys are good enough on the field. And they're probably practicing at a little more of a intensive level.
I agree.
Than a lot of these schools that are going through, the quote unquote spring football type of fall practice.
They play Central Arkansas to home and home, so I mean there's a quality opponent as well. That will be more judge. You can't judge them playing Oklahoma. This is a payday only kind of deal. Why they're doing it, and that maybe tells you how hard up Missouri State is. By the way, that they steamrolled this one, Kolpack. Come hell or high water, this football game was going to happen, and now here it is.
It'll be interesting next spring, and hopefully the teams do play next at the end of February when the season resumes with these games. If the teams that are playing 1, 2, or 3 games this fall, real games, if they start out next winter,
right,
at a little more accelerated pace
than the other ones. Yeah, I'm curious on that. Let's talk a little bit about that before we wrap. You had a story earlier this week on Cordell Volson. That was probably the next Bison senior wondering, is he going to opt out of the spring and get ready for the NFL or play? And he's told you he's playing.
He's playing. And if he was a second high-round draft pick potentially, I don't think he would. But it sounds like he's probably a late-round free agent type of guy. So I think that gives him another year. Remember, he's only started 1 year.
Correct. The last year was his first year starting at right tackle.
So it gives him another year of tape, of another year being a starter. Will he be the left tackle? I don't know. He'll probably still stay at right, or who knows?
Boy,
what do you think?
I think he's a left tackle.
And then you move him to left.
I think you can move him, and I think Jalen Sundell is your right tackle. That's at least how I would envision it, but I
was thinking the other way around.
Okay, you can one way or the other. I'm not AJ Blazek. I've got that luxury to decide
Cordell
that.
told me, he goes, do they want to groom a guy, which I would wonder if Sundell.
Sundell would be that guy, and we've been told that, too.
And here's the other part I think that really tugged at Cordell, that Click Content Studios and we spent a day in Balfour, North Dakota at the Volson home at Ralph Volson's big machinery shop.
I was going to say ranch. Is ranch the right word? You've been there. I can't describe it like that.
It's just it's a big operation. Ralph Volson Enterprises. They have like over 300 machinery type vehicles on the property. That there's a North Dakota loyalty to him, I think, with his family, with Tanner, with his mom and dad. There was a derailment. I asked him when I talked to Cordell, I go, we were just talking around before the interview, and I said, hey, say hi to your mom and dad. Have there been any derailments lately? Because when there's a derailment, they call Ralph Volson to clean it up.
Wow.
They don't call little people. They call
big guy.
They big 6'7", 313 offensive linemen to help clean up derailments. Yeah, there was one a couple weeks ago where they helped clean up. But there's just that inner toughness, I think, that and loyalty that Cordell, I think, feels to this program and to the state and to his teammates.
And I think to your point as well, I think you can't underestimate the only 1 year starting. I know we're talking plenty about that on Trey Lance, but also for a tackle, I think there's more, and not limited tape as well. I think that bodes well for him if he wants to go. He's going to come back and play another year.
It's a big deal for NDSU to have him coming back, because to lose one is tough. To lose both your tackles,
that's a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. To have one veteran presence back there at tackle, I think, is really big.
Before we wrap, the Football Oversight Committee signed off on the playoff format. It'll start the week of April 18th. That's a Sunday, folks. So it's actually the first round would be April 24th for 16 teams. Then the quarterfinals May 1st, semifinals May 8th, and then the championship May 15th. So, Kolpack, if we were to backtrack it from that date, from April 17th as the final day of the regular season, I'm guessing you're going to need about 10 weeks to play 8 games because you have 11 teams in the league. And I'm not great at math here. So I'm thinking February 13th. Is that what you're hearing around there? That would probably be the start of the season?
Somewhere around there. Then you take 29 days of practice before that.
So we're talking early
January. And then you
January.
take a week of acclimatization.
We're talking basically
which is meant for heat, but I don't know what you do for cold.
Especially the first week of January?
Yeah.
That might be cruel and unusual punishment for these guys.
You have to acclimatize. Well, if you're in Montana, you got to acclimatize to the cold.
I don't even get me going on that. But that would mean basically the second week of January is when winter camp would begin, which they've done in December of the past years, but that's when they would begin practice.
What are Montana State? They don't have indoor facilities. What are they going to do?
I have no idea.
I skied out in Montana in January. It is
I was going to say, my next question is how cold is it?
In February, I've skied out there. It's winter.
That's why
it's just like it is here.
I'm taking it with a grain of salt on this spring stuff. I really am. We can all talk about dates and stuff like that, but it just you answered the question right there. How are they going to do it? How are they going to do that? I have no idea. You're going to practice in your basketball arena? That's not going to work. That's why I don't know.
Maybe you go to Arizona and do online classes and you set up camp for a month.
That's one way to do it. We'll see.
How do you afford that?
I have no idea. That's why I think it's interesting as each week goes by and games are played. Are these the teams that are actually trying to play in the fall? How is this going to look? Or if they end up making it through 7, 8, 9 games, to say, you know what, maybe we should have given it a try. I don't know. We don't know that right now. We also don't know the lingering effects of people that get this on football, what's going to happen. All I could think of was when Austin Peay and Central Arkansas were playing, and this will wrap it up here. What was Jim Harbaugh, PJ Fleck, Ryan Day, the Big Ten, James Franklin, what were they thinking, Kolpack, on there, sitting in their couch, watching those teams are playing, and we can't right now?
They were thinking the presidents are off-the-record comments.
Did you find it interesting who voted?
They didn't vote, did they?
Well, no, the vote came out now because the Nebraska players filed a lawsuit, so they had to make the vote public. And the 3 schools that voted to play were Nebraska and Ohio State. No surprise on that. The third one did surprise me. It was Iowa. Iowa was full go to play. Not Michigan, not Penn State, not Michigan State, not Wisconsin. But Iowa was the third.
And certainly not Minnesota.
No.
I can tell you, the Minnesota system, the baseball team of Duluth can't even have a team meeting.
Yeah.
You know, what's that tell you?
That tells you exactly where they're at with stuff right now. So we'll see. You want to do one pick for this weekend? I'll actually give you a legitimate game. I won't give you like Missouri State and Oklahoma because I know that game's going to go here right up your alley in Lawrence, Kansas, 9 o'clock Saturday night. Coastal
9 p.m. Central?
9 p.m. Central because it's on TV on Fox Sports 1. Coastal Carolina's playing KU on Saturday night. And they'll be plugged into that one.
Oh. What's McFeely think? He kind of ditched Coastal.
He's off on the shots.
He's off.
Yeah.
He's off.
Les Miles, year 2 with the Jayhawks against Jimmy Chadwell.
I've lost track of Coastal, honestly.
As does everybody else when they moved up to FBS.
Yeah,
they just kind of drifted into the Sun Belt. So
I got to go with KU.
We'll go with Kansas on that one. There you have it, folks. Our latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast. Our thanks to Saul Phillips for joining us there. Appreciate you listening, and find other episodes, our past episodes, wherever you download your podcasts. And we'll see everybody next time.
Bye.